Thank you guys so much for joining me for another episode of Keeping It Real with America's Supermom. I am here with a friend of mine. We are, virtual friends. I tell you, this COVID has really changed the whole dynamics of what connections, friendship means being on a virtual platform. But Scott White is here. He and I got connected through Zoom calls and conversations. And so it's been a while since we've had the opportunity to talk. So I'm so excited to catch up. But before we get into that, I want to give Scott the opportunity to introduce himself.
Thank you so much, Lachelle. Yeah, it's been a while since we connected first, and I think it's been a while since we've chatted together. So I'm really pleased to have this opportunity, and I just really appreciate the space. I'm a Canadian living in Scotland right now, moving down to England in the fall from following my wife's work. She's also Canadian, but is working as an academic in history. So I kind of follow her around. Her job is a lot more stationary. It's a lot more location specific than mine has been.
Okay.
So for those who don't know me or haven't come across me before, I'm a personal trainer as well as faith and transformational life coach. I love working with people, doing deep transformational sessions, helping them connect a little bit better with God or with their version of God, and seeing people set free from their own limitations and from the things that we all have that stack up and keep us bound in different areas of our life, whether that's mindset or agreements that we've made, or substances or sort of crutches that we've turned to over time to help us manage life and move forward in a way. So yeah, that's kind of a snapshot of me. I'm working pretty much exclusively online right now. Everything is virtual, as you said. So yeah, it means there's a lot of opportunities and a changing landscape, and I'm really excited to be doing the work and to be here.
I love that. And, I love the whole thing about the dynamic of the crutches. I mean, that just really resonated with me because oftentimes when it comes to moving forward, there are some things that are holding us back, whether it's crutches, it's belief system. So, what was it that prompted you to kind of get into this field of work?
That's a good question. I used to work as a refrigeration technician.
Hmm.
When I moved to the UK, I found myself upgraded to an engineer. It's same job, but they call me an engineer here. And the company that I worked for, I'd been doing the work for 15 years, pretty close on.
Hmm.
And I really enjoy the work. I love working with my hands. I love the problem solving aspect. And the company that I worked for completely took advantage of my generous nature and ran me into the ground. I ended up emotionally burned out and physically spent, and realized at a certain point that I was actually literally trading my life force, my life energy for money, and decided that wasn't a good trade anymore. So I quit my job with no real outcomes and no real prospects. I didn't know what else I was going to do, but I just quit my job. I just knew that I couldn't keep working there. I
Hmm.
started working in outdoor retail, which plays into a lot of my leisure activities. I love doing outdoor activities,
Hmm.
uh, and teaching music again. And that was kind of I teach fiddle primarily, which was handy being in Scotland.
Hmm.
There's lots of people looking to learn fiddle and looking to play fiddle. So uh, and then I started this kind of journey of self-discovery. And during that time, I discovered key kind of core aspects to my being, which I see different than personality traits or things like that. These are things that I really feel like God has kind of put into me that make me me. Like I wouldn't be Scott if I didn't have some of these things. And really briefly, like the four that I've identified so far are that I'm a student and life philosopher.
Hmm.
I'm a teacher and educator, more importantly, an educator. I love sharing the knowledge that I get. I'm
Mm-hmm.
an encourager. I love to see people built up and encouraged and more kind of confident in themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a defender and protector. Those are threads that I see sewn throughout my life. When I
Mm-hmm.
looked at that list, the first place that I saw that was that I could work inside all four of those was as a personal trainer. And as I was training to become a personal trainer, I came across life coaching as well. And I love how life coaching ties in, allows me to tie in my faith as well into the work that I do. So I kind of, I guess, long and short, that's how I got into it.
I love that. Now, and most people that have a particular career that they've outlined themselves being in, you don't have the acknowledgement sometimes of like a faith transformational coach. So,
Mm.
why is that intentional for you?
Well, that's really intentional for me because I grew up in a Christian home,
Hmm.
and more than that, I've developed a really strong relationship with God as I understand God through the Christian lens. I find um, that a lot of the transformations that have come about in my life are often fueled by time that I've spent with God, time that I've spent connecting and listening um, to hear who God thinks I am, who He says I am, and my faith is pivotal in my own life and has been pivotal in coming to the realization about the work that I'm supposed to do. And um, and I really feel like part of the work that God has for me is in bringing health, healing, and hope back into the church. I think we see a lot of people inside the church who are struggling with different mental health issues and challenges, and struggling to embrace their own freedom that I believe is their inheritance and their God-given right on this earth.
Hmm.
And that's not what we actually see when you look closely at a lot of congregations. And also not really seeing where Christians have access to a path to move them in that direction.
Hmm.
Um, so it's important in two ways. One is I don't think that I could be as effective a coach if I didn't have a close relationship with God. And I see that He has transformational power with the people that I work with as well. I do work with people who are not Christian as well. Like I don't exclusively work with Christians in my coaching practice.
Hmm.
I don't think I work with anybody right now who doesn't acknowledge a higher power in some form.
Hmm.
So that kind of it takes a lot of pressure off of me. So in some ways, it's kind of a relief to be doing my coaching along with God, because I know that He's going to pitch in at times and maybe drop a word of knowledge, let me know that I should ask this question or kind of guide somebody this way, and and then the transformation, especially in with my Christian clients, the transformation is up to Him, up to God, to kind of bring that about after any revelations that we've come across, taking those insights and turning them into action. Um, so from that kind of perspective, from that understanding, I just want to make it clear to people when I start working with them from the outset that I am Christian, and that necessarily colors the way that I see the world. And they don't have to agree with me, but they do have to understand that and respect that. Just as I don't have to agree with their beliefs for us to work together, but I do need to understand them a little bit and to respect their experience and to honor their experience of life and faith. Is
Hmm.
that kind of, does that answer
Yeah,
the
that's
question?
awesome. Because one of the things it just brings up to me, my husband's a pastor, and
Mm,
sometimes there's a lot more pressure when you do acknowledge your faith. It's like, oh,
Mm.
you can't be 100% of who you are because, the pastor's watching, or,
Ah,
oh, you guys have a church. So I just was curious as to how that impacted your business, because, you have the one hand where people kind of expect, even higher standards from you.
mhm.
The humanality is somewhat kind of taken away, and it's replaced with the pedestal where you can't do anything wrong. So I was
Right.
just curious what your experience was with that.
Yeah. So with that kind of specifically, I'm very careful to tell people that just because I'm a Christian doesn't mean that I am or think that I am perfect.
Mhm.
You know, it's my understand and my stance as a disciple, as an apprentice of Jesus,
Mhm.
is that I'm a work in progress, that I'm always a work in progress. And and so in my coaching agreements that I send to my clients, I kind of lay out, there might be times that we misunderstand each other. I might say something that upsets you, and or I might I might say something that isn't right, that isn't true. And my my responsibility then as a person, and more so as well, like feeling the weight of carrying that reputation with me,
Mhm.
recognizing that I am an ambassador for the kingdom of God on earth. uh, it means that I make more of an effort to be upfront with people, to set really clear expectations and understandings, and also go out of my way to make things right if I feel like I've done something that has upset somebody, or that I've said something wrong, or that I've misrepresented myself or my God or my faith.
Mhm.
Um, so I go out of my way to be loving, and out of my way to be caring to the people that are around me, um, and I make an effort to make things right as quickly as I can, um, and try to share with people that I don't think that I'm perfect. I don't believe that I'm perfect. God didn't put me on this earth to never mess up. Um, if He did, uh, I've I don't think that there would be a single year that I fulfilled my mission. Do you know?
No, a single
So
day. Okay. I'm just
single
saying.
day, right? Forget years getting out of
Exactly.
bed some days.
So true. Now,
Yeah.
so going to the limiting beliefs, the crutches, and things that we use, what do you find are the most common crutches, so to speak, that we have that kind of interferes with us living the life that we are designed to live?
Yeah, yeah. Um, most of our crutches are, they're addictions of some sort. Now, there are acceptable addictions, and especially, so if we speak from a Christian framework from inside the church, you'd recognize this as well, that there are some acceptable addictions like food or gossip in some congregations, or things like that, that we know it's not the right food for our soul, but we kind of do it because it makes us feel a little bit better in the moment.
Mhm.
And food is a tricky one though, because we need it to survive,
Mhm.
and we're meant to enjoy it.
Mhm.
Uh, and it can be used as a way to hide from what we don't want to feel, or to avoid feeling the things that are actually going on inside. I've used food like that before, even as a personal trainer.
Mhm.
I've caught myself before reaching for another helping when I know very well that I've eaten enough.
Mhm.
Um, so a lot of them are kind of, a lot of our crutches, a lot of the things that we hold on to are because of a misunderstanding, I think, of who God has made us to be,
Mhm.
or who God is Himself. Like the realities of the world, the realities of us, and the realities of the world. When we don't understand what's actually going on there, then we start to use people and use things to feel better about ourselves rather than looking at what's actually going on inside. So broadly, all of the crutches that people use are a way to protect themselves from something, which is kind of supported by research and statements from Bessel van der Kolk, who's a Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who's a clinical psychologist and has done a lot of research, ran the Trauma Center of America for a while. I think he's still very involved with their work. He says that there is no addiction without trauma. And that actually requires a little bit of unpacking as well, because when people think trauma, they think PTSD, going to war, or sexual abuse in childhood, or something like that. And trauma more broadly is any time that our expectations aren't met. So when we have, as children, when we start to, your first trauma is probably, for most people, would be crying and not having somebody there immediately to comfort you, right? So when we start to unpick this and see what trauma is in the broader context, then everybody's dealing with trauma in some way. And then addiction as well. Addiction isn't only the things that we do that are incredibly harmful to us, but addiction can be when you're staying up late knowing that you need to go to bed, knowing that you have an important meeting the next day, and you click on one more episode of the latest show. You go to one more, you look up one more video on YouTube, you look up, you go to one more Pinterest site, like that in essence, because it's a behavior that is involuntary and is helping us to manage or cover our pain, our feelings, that's an addiction behavior. Is that so? I look at a very broad kind of set of definitions, and that
break it down. Yeah. I mean, I think that is so true, because I go through that. I'm on this app Clubhouse.
Right.
And like last night, people invite me to rooms, and you're supposed to be in there for like an hour. It gets heated. Other people come in and it lasts forever. So, there was this room last night, and they were talking about social media or something, and the room was closing, but they were getting ready to open up another one. And it's like this battle with yourself. I need to go to bed, but you might miss something. I mean, it really is this tug about feeling like, I don't know, whatever it is at the time, that you're tired, or that, how are you really going to serve yourself if you're tired trying to attend? Because you're not going to kind of gather the same information the same way at your optimal peak state, but there is this inner dialogue, so I think that's really profound that you would mention that. So that's good.
Yeah. So, and that to me, like, that describes actually every problem that people are dealing with. As far as like, somebody asked me on in a recent conversation that I had, he asked, well, as a coach, what do you see as the biggest problem that people are facing? And I think maybe that speaks a little bit to your question as well. To me, the biggest problem is the loss of community. I think that's what people are feeling the most. And that, to me, that has been a problem that started to develop with the Industrial Revolution, and has just kind of carried on progressing through history, just marching forward, time marching on, technology marching on. Now we're in a world where we are obsessed with the bowel movements of people on the other side of the planet and don't know the names of your neighbors.
Yeah.
how many people how many people actually know how many kids their neighbors have, or where they grew up, or what they're interested in, what they even do for work.
Mhm.
Do you know? And so we're living in this hyper connected, very shallow societal interactions. We live with very shallow interactions generally,
Mhm.
and we have no capacity to enter deep conversation and deep relationship with people, because we just we don't have the attention span anymore. We can't
Mhm.
focus to care about what somebody is saying for long enough. Like, as a, I'm sure you're aware of this as well, as a somebody on social media and trying to run an information platform. On Instagram, if you don't grab somebody's attention in the first 2 seconds, you've lost them.
Right.
They're not going to keep watching. I think YouTube is slightly longer, where you have about 10 seconds to
Mhm.
grab somebody's interest. But if you don't grab their interest in 10 seconds, nah, you know what? I'm out. Like, I'll go look up something else, go look up somebody else.
Mhm.
That's shocking.
It is.
It's just,
It really is. I mean, when you see these reels and they're like 30 seconds, 15 seconds, I'm thinking, this is crazy, that
uh,
we have such short attention spans. And,
yeah.
so how I'm just in a point to where how do you get past that? Because a lot of this is like the sensationalism, rather
Mm.
than really being able to get deeper to the heart of the matter. So how do you make that transition?
It's very difficult to do online, as far as getting people engaged. I understand that some of the Clubhouse rooms are. I've not got in Clubhouse yet. I use Android, so I'm waiting for it
Mhm,
to be released on Android. But
mhm,
I understand that a few people have been trying to do some of that.
mhm,
Um, for listeners, if this is something that you're feeling, if you're watching this and you're thinking, I want to get away from soundbite culture. I miss sitting down with somebody. Well, I mean, very soon. In the UK, we're still locked down. This is over a year now in not full lockdown. We opened up last summer for a while, but we went back in after Christmas, and we've
mhm,
been in lockdown again since then.
mhm,
But we're looking forward to a time in the next few weeks where we'll be able to actually sit down with people. And I would say take that opportunity. And the biggest thing, put your phone somewhere else. Just make an intention that when you go in for coffee with your friend, you're going to leave your phone in your purse, or leave your phone in your car, or swap phones. You could swap phones and hold the other person's phone for them. So if there's something important comes up, you can pass it back, but you're not going to be distracted by your own conversations. Um, Looking up some long form content, rather than scrolling through TikTok, or going through reels in Instagram. Um, Look up an interview with somebody who is speaking about something that you're interested in,
mhm,
and understanding that the discomfort that you feel when you feel like the conversation's maybe not going anywhere, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you can expand your capacity for discomfort. You can actually uh, expand expand your capacity to pay attention to somebody.
mhm.
Part of it as well is that we don't want to pay attention to ourselves. We're so good at being distracted by technology, by news media, by just about everything, anything, that people actually aren't able to sit with themselves.
Mhm,
And bringing back in some of the spiritual coaching, the faith coaching, one of the most profound and powerful things that I've ever got or encouraged my clients to do is to engage with silence,
mhm,
to make a choice, to make an intention. And 10 minutes is excruciating for some people, but you can build up your tolerance. And as you sit, what you find is that there's a lot of emotion. So when we're getting back to this idea of trauma, um, as joyous as it is, if you're a firstborn, you have 100% attention from two people in your house, right? When the second child is born, that can be a trauma because it upsets your world order. It upsets the way that your world functions. And now you're not only not the top priority, but you're now not the only priority.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a miniature trauma. There are a lot of things that we do to distract ourselves from that. And if you can imagine taking that pain, and it's kind of like an infection in your skin where it festers. It's not stationary, it's not dormant. It's doing things in the background, trying to get your attention, trying to get noticed. What we do is we get better and better and better at distracting ourselves from what's going on internally. And eventually we need to face that. Eventually we're going to need to look that square in the face and say, well, this is a thing that I'm feeling or that I'm sensing. And if we don't, it can manifest itself with all sorts of physical ailments and conditions, and or mental health problems, poor mental health. And when we get quiet, you're removing all of those distractions, and that can be terrifying to some people. If you can imagine, a miniature pain, a miniature hurt that was instilled when you were 2 with the birth of a younger sibling, and then you distract yourself from that. And then that builds up. And by the time you're willing to look at it, you're maybe looking at 20, 25 years, 30 years, 40 years for some people. That's an awfully long time for that to be just kind of operating in the background. And you can bet that it's got pretty loud over that time, trying to be noticed. They're like kids. These kind of feelings, they're like kids. They don't stop talking when you're not paying attention. They get louder. They get louder and louder and louder and do other things, throw pots around, try to get your attention. And then if you stack on top of that all of the miniature hurts that you had up until school age, and then all of the miniature hurts that you probably got and didn't know how to deal with through school age, what you've got is a cacophony, a cacophony and an army of these little hurts that are now shouting for your attention. And as soon as you switch the music off and sit with them, it can be scary. It can be overwhelming. And what I would say to people is, it's not forever. And if you choose to engage with this, it gets better so much more more quickly than you could imagine. And there is a point that you just have to wait through. You have to be willing to sit until those voices are done talking to you. And there are techniques and strategies for that. But silence was a practice that was very much encouraged in lots of the early church, especially in through the early medieval and earlier as well. It's a practice that was part of spiritual formation. So that's another place where faith coaching is informing my coaching work, and something that I care about quite a lot.
I love that. I mean, this just really is so much about what my experience was dealing with depression for 13 years and 3 hospitalizations. And, wasn't until I had that quiet time that I was able to turn that situation around and maintain it. Anybody can change, but how long is the change going to last? Is it going to
Right.
be permanent or temporary? And
Right.
it's about having those practices of having that time to hear. And I think, the hard thing is we each have our own inner GPS, so to speak. but we listen to everybody else's, thinking that they know better. Isn't that crazy?
It is
So,
crazy.
yeah. And a lot of times we don't even know how. And I think, another thing, like you were saying with the traumas, it wasn't until I went through my own experience with depression that I realized that, for post traumatic trauma, things that all my kids experience were on that spectrum, a
Mm,
new birth, a move, a change to a different school, a new teacher. I mean, they experience this on a regular basis. And, it's just amazing once you begin to dive into that you begin to understand and how to communicate even better. But, it takes work doing the right thing, I think.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it is a conscious effort to engage with the work. You have to make the choice to engage with the work. And the other thing to say that, kind of, thank you for sharing, and I know that you love seeing people on your show kind of
Hmm.
um, recognizing parts of themselves in the conversation. So that really shows up in the work that you do, and I appreciate you for it.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, of course.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, if this is something that you're interested in doing,
Mhm.
nobody else can do it for you. It's like going to the bathroom. You got to do it yourself.
So
You
true.
can't kind of like offload that responsibility to somebody else. So
Mhm.
for anybody, if you're noticing things that come up and you don't know why you do it, like for whatever reason, you start yelling at your kids, and they're actually good kids and you love them very much. I'm sure
Mhm.
that can be one of those little voices saying, "Hey, notice me, pay attention. Like I'm over here. I've
Mhm.
got something I want to be listened to."
Mhm.
Um, road rage is a great example.
Mhm.
It You probably don't actually. I mean, you probably don't even know that other driver. So
Right.
actually hating them is really extreme. That's quite an extreme reaction.
Mhm.
Probably uncalled for if you analyze the actual specifics of the event.
Mhm.
And yet we have this come up. Um, Fights about the dishes. It's my favorite example because the dishes are never about the dishes.
Right. That's so
And
true.
if you're noticing those things, maybe just find somewhere quiet for a few minutes if you can, like, or set yourself a little bit of time to deal with it and just asking yourself some simple questions. If you're a person who likes to journal, do some journaling and just asking, um,
We have tooth number on 13. I don't know
oh,
if you know them or not. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for watching.
um, so if you yeah, um, where was I going with that? But if you're somebody who likes to journal, journaling can be a great way to start to engage with silence,
I love that.
and just asking some really good questions, like, actually, if sitting still isn't okay for you, a lot of people really struggle with the idea of meditation, thinking that you have to sit still and have your eyes closed and all of this stuff. Walking or swimming are really great places for people to start with meditation if you make the choice to do it in silence, if you make the choice to do it without music in,
Mm-hmm.
right? And um, so walking is a great meditation. I walk and pray a lot. I'll
Mm-hmm.
walk and meditate. I like to run, and I run without anything in my ears. I don't listen to podcasts or music while I'm running. It's a great time for me to connect with God and to connect with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And asking simple questions like, "What am I noticing?" That is a super, super, super powerful question to ask yourself in journaling time or in prayer time or in meditation. What am I noticing?
Mm-hmm.
And then what does that tell me? Like, what is it trying to tell me? What is it here for? Why am I noticing this? Why is this coming up right now? If you could ask questions like that,
Mm-hmm.
open questions that start to explore the feeling,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to find a rich rich mine of information and wisdom about yourself and about the world that that is hard to explain if people haven't experienced it. And I think you've probably experienced that, as you were saying, your time kind of engaging with the silence and hinting at some of the revelations that you've had uh, is huge. It is huge.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And I totally agree with the art of questions, because I tell people that when you feel like you're in that space of not feeling your best, if you should start asking yourself questions instead of telling yourself stuff. Because, we
Right.
tell our stuff, you're not good enough, or,
Mhm.
this isn't going to work and all this. But the minute you begin to be in a space of asking questions, you give room to reflect. And that's the thing for
Mhm.
me. I was on autopilot, just not even thinking. Okay. It's just like
Uh,
task oriented, certain markers that kind of reminded me of what I was going to do, but nothing really in deep reflection. So,
mhm.
the questions come from the reflection come from the questions you ask, because you give yourself an assignment to try to figure out the answers rather
Right.
than repeating what's on auto loop in your
Mhm.
head
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
may not be serving you. So
Yeah.
um thank you. Someone says they like my hat. Luke Skywalking, you know him?
No.
That's somebody else who's on. um but I just love this conversation. I definitely don't have the a short attention span. I could go on for hours with this, because this
Yeah.
is definitely something that really hit home for me. And I think so many people are missing the richness of life by
Mhm.
not necessarily having the right tools to get to the other side with this type of mindset. But it takes work, and that's another thing. So um it definitely, if something that you heard as a viewer resonated with you, reach out to Scott, because these things are possible. But it's no magic potion or
Mhm.
overnight success. It takes the deep work of really diving deep and asking yourself some questions that, as he mentioned in that example, could go back as far as being a 2-year old, based on
Mhm.
the patterns that we continue to layer with it. So this has just been a great conversation. Like I said, I could go on for hours, Scott. So what's the best way for the audience to get a hold of you?
So they can find me through my website, which is GraniteBearCoaching.com. Granite Bear is my coaching business.
Mhm.
Um, they can find me on Instagram. I am at GraniteBear_coaching, and you can find me on Facebook. My personal Facebook is a great place to connect with me. Scott White, or Scott J White, I think, is my handle. It's my face, so it's really easy to find. And they're also welcome to check out my business page or ask to join one of my groups. And you can find links for that on all of my Facebook and Instagram.
Awesome. So, I know it's hard to kind of summarize everything into one final thought, but what would you like to leave the audience with today?
Mm. Do you know what comes up for me a lot lately is just you're not alone. Doesn't matter what you're dealing with. It doesn't matter how you're feeling or what what you feel like you're struggling with. You're not alone, and life moves forward. If you're in a place that you don't necessarily feel like you're living at your best, life moves forward. You're not going to be stuck there forever. So I think kind of those two thoughts. You're not alone, and you're not going to be stuck. And you're not stuck forever.
I love that. That is just so encouraging, I tell you, because I am a witness that there is life after depression, after hospitalizations. It was 13 years for me, three
Yeah,
hospitalizations. That is possible,
yeah,
and it's a practice that, it just doesn't take a lot of work to be mediocre or average, right? The work
yeah.
is being above, the average. The work is having the life that you desire. It's just not gonna magically fall into your lap. It takes action, and but the right kind of action. So I think this is great conversation. So again, I appreciate the nuggets. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch this because I love to take notes, and just the whole thing about the crutches. I mean, that really resonates with me because it's like when we have crutches when it comes to some of these things that we struggle with, it's accepted to have these crutches to
Hmm.
prevent us from being whole, you know?
Hmm.
So that's that's a conversation all by itself, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I would say as well, like, there's nothing wrong with crutches
Right.
in the beginning. Like,
Mm-hmm.
here's sorry, but just a moment of grace for people as well. If you feel like you're stuck leaning on something that you don't need anymore,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean that it was never useful. When you break your leg, crutches are incredibly helpful. When the cast comes off, you can put the crutches down too.
Right. So true. And there's a lot of engagement here, so this is good.
Ah,
Um
fantastic.
yeah. So some people that definitely can reach out to you. So I'm loving the engagement tooth number 13.0, Luke Skywalking. So um Bobby the Butcher. So this is great. So great people that we can connect with. So we want to thank you
Yeah.
guys for watching us. And if something resonated with you regarding Scott's position and what he's doing now currently, feel free to reach out to him. That's what these conversations are all about. He's in Scotland and I am in the United States. And it's these connections that allow us to come together at this time with you guests that are here joining us to have this conversation and reach out and get some actionable steps that apply for you in your life because there is no one size fits all. I mean, everybody is different. We all have different stories, different perceptions that, have clouded the life that we live. So, it's a personal journey. So feel free to reach out to Scott. Um, and so I really appreciate you guys joining us today. So, Scott, we're going to have you come back. I mean, this is the first time I've ever had this much engagement on a live broadcast. So I'm
Oh,
pretty
I'm
excited.
honored.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is fun. But and that's one of the things too. It's like, it would be so great to have these questions ahead of time because people just don't understand the dynamics of doing things live. You
Sure.
want to look at your guests and give them eye contact, then you're over here distracted about a question. And, because there's certain energy, which really, I think, is the thing that really has moved me forward so much with being a podcaster is that connection.
Mm.
But it's purposeful connection. It's like you can't really. I switched over to StreamYard because when you try to do it in a setting through Facebook or something else, when the comments are there, you're trying to read the comment, but then you want to
Constantly.
listen to the
Yeah.
person. And, that connection, that disconnect makes a difference for the interview,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
hmm
Moments of distraction, and it just it interrupts the flow.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and if anybody could see that, that is so much a testament to how you can disrupt that negative thought.
Mm.
Just
Mm.
imagine if you're doing something negative and boom, something interrupts that really quickly.
Ah,
You have a moment in time to where you can create a new normal.
yeah.
So that's one thing that I'm getting out of this because it happens. You see a comment and it's like, what was I saying?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Oh, it's so true.
So, well, this has just been great, Scott. So, again, if you guys resonated with him, reach out to him. Thank you so much for your time, Scott. And we wish you the best in all that you're doing. And definitely want to have you come back because I mean, there's so many different topics that we could explore. So this has really been a great, great conversation. Appreciate your flexibility with me. We
Of
were
course.
having some little scheduling things behind the scenes, but great conversation.
Wonderful. Yeah, I so appreciate and thank you for being here, being present, and for holding the
Mhm.
space. And for everybody who's been watching, like, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be in this space with you. I really, really appreciate it, and I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, you guys, we are just loving those that have been in the studio with us, that have been making these comments. We appreciate you, and you really are making an impact. You're making a difference. And that's what it starts with, is getting to be a part of the conversation. You know, when we're dealing with change and moving forward, it's not an overnight thing. You know, it
Mm,
takes
mm,
time. You know, just as we talk about crutches, you have to give yourself time to heal, and you have to break off things in bite-sized pieces so that you can move
mm,
forward and be able to manage it as you do this transformation. So
mm.
thanks again, Scott, and thanks to everyone who is watching, and we will see you on the next episode. Bye for now, everybody.
Bye.